All right, I messed up. And I messed up two ways. First, my previous scenario where I did the week 2 of nuclear war, World War III for the European and Midwest or Middle East theater, one of the ICBM silo farms in the United States just didn't fire. Didn't catch this at first. Didn't catch this until I was preparing to do the week 3 video. And so I thought some stuff was a little bit odd, one of which was that the North Korean casualties were a lot lower than I thought they should have been, and that the Russian casualties were a little bit lower than I thought they should have been. And so once I caught it, I went and I tried to test it several times, and I just could not get them to fire. So I ended up, deleting those units and resetting them. I'm not sure what happened there. Second issue is I recorded this revisit video in order to make sure it was done correctly, and the right mic wasn't turned on for OBS Studio. So I didn't record any audio. So now I'm going back to record the audio. I've done this before, but I usually like to just do the audio as I'm running through the scenario because everything's fresh in my head. But it is what it is, so I'm doing it now. So in this video, it's a revisit. If you want to hear about the actual plans, the thought process behind it, please watch the original video. There will be a link in the description. This is just going to kind of get down to the brass tacks, so to speak. And so the first part, we're into week 2 now. Two of the U.S. Ohio-class ballistic missile subs are going to fire their Trident missiles in an attempt to take out the Russian missile farms and some of the mobile launch sites, as well as early warning radar and other locations. So you see the subs are starting to fire now. So because we're already a week into this conflict, nuclear forces are at a high level of readiness. With subs, especially if they're able to get closer to the opposing nation's borders, the time from launch to the time of strike is much shorter than a silo-based ICBM or even a mobile launcher. So there's not a lot of time to react, but because they're on a high state of readiness, because nukes have already been let off, the Russian forces are going to react they feel like their silos are under threat. They have to use it or lose it. And really, once you start targeting early warning radar sites, missile silos, things like that, that's when a limited war really is no longer a thing. Some people believe there is no such thing as a limited war in general. I'll say that it's not entirely accurate, but once you start targeting these locations, the idea of a limited war kind of ceases because you either use it or you lose it potentially. So you see almost all the silos are able to get off shots before they're taken out. There are a few that are destroyed, but most of them are able to fire. And so we'll see. And so the flip side of this is once the U.S. detects that they have a massive inbound ICBM strike from Russia, that they are now going to give the order to fire their ICBMs. So both countries are able to hold back on their sub-launch ballistic missiles, and that's where we're kind of going to get into week 3 with that. But at this point, both countries decide they have to use it or lose it. This is also going to impact, and again, you'd have to watch the Pacific Theater week 2 video, which is in the description, to see, but a similar thing is going to happen with China and the United States. So the United States is also already striking China with some of their sub-launch ballistic missiles, but they're also going to have pre-targeted ICBM strikes as well. So the United States is going to be targeting Russia, Belarus, China, and North Korea. See, all 3 missile farms are firing this time. Still not sure what happened last time, but so we have the Russian missiles inbound, just as we are firing off our missiles. At this point, people that live around those silos, which I know a couple of my subscribers do, once you see those start firing off in the air, you're probably not feeling pretty good. Because if we're firing ours, generally speaking, theirs are probably getting fired or inbound as well. You see there massive strikes across the country. It's a mix of counterforce and counter value. Hawaii and Alaska has also been hit. There's our missiles coming in. You see China is also launching their ICBMs and also mobile launchers. So again, check out that video to see more details on that. So I tried to set this up so we could see both Russia, China, and North Korea. Unfortunately, it means you probably don't get a good view of any individual countries, the strikes coming in on them, but gives you a high-level overview. So, letting these strikes kind of play out here. And while this is happening, Russia has also launched nuclear-tipped cruise missiles across various NATO countries. So once we're done seeing these strikes, we're going to pivot over to take a look at those as he attacks multiple NATO bases as well as capital locations to take out NATO countries' governments. There we're going to kind of zoom in there and see some of that firsthand. So again, we still see some stuff from China going across to the United States, but again, we'll check out that video to see that. Here we see my attack plans. And the Pakistan-India strikes, again, that's in the Pacific theater. Our next ones we're going to see is the inbound against NATO, and then we're going to see French strikes against Russia. So the cruise missiles in this sim, they don't show up particularly well, but you will see them. You see it, you can kind of see it there where my mouse is. They're not as visually, they don't pop as much as the ICBMs and sub-launch ballistic missiles. A lot of that is because the warheads don't separate, so they don't go from that to the red triangles. Here we see multiple strikes across the United Kingdom. We also saw strikes in France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Sweden, Finland. Here's Turkey. So they strike a base and also their capital city. Or I should say the government. So France is given the authorizations to strike with their nuclear subs. They have 3 subs in a state of readiness. 2 of them have launched. So they're again hitting counter value and counter force against Russia. Some of them are targeted on silos that are already destroyed or already fired their missiles. You know, and a lot of the stuff's pre-targeted, and this stuff's happening very quickly. So there is a certain level of redundancy. United States already had hit Moscow, but France hit it extremely hard as well, and St. Petersburg. So we're going to final part is zoom in on the Middle East. We're at the video earlier. Some slight changes here, but still it's pretty similar to that video if you've seen it already. But it's going to start, of course, Israeli allies like the United States and the United Kingdom are already engaged in a nuclear conflict. United States case across 2 fronts. And so I would say they're kind of at this point standing alone in some ways. And Hezbollah and some other Iranian-backed militias, as well as Iran itself, have been launching conventional missile strikes into Israel and virtually depleted their ballistic missile defense. And so Israel is making a call at this point, feeling like their state is in jeopardy. And so they give an authorization for limited low-yield nuclear strikes across the border of South Lebanon to break up Hezbollah forces and basically turn that into a radioactive wasteland that they won't be able to invade across. So they're going to utilize 5 mobile launchers, Jericho missiles, with nuclear warheads. It's the world's worst kept secret that Israel is a nuclear armed nation. They've never publicly stated as such. But again, it's not exactly a secret. Strategic ambiguity. So there they are. What is the end result of this? The Arab countries, along with Iran, it's at this point kind of a unified front. And so fearing invasion now across from Syria, potentially even some of those forces going through Jordan, utilize their borders, and even attacks coming from Egypt. They're going to now nuke along those borders to break up any enemy forces and prevent invasion forces from crossing those borders. So we'll see much larger amount of follow-on strikes. I gotta speed up the time a little bit on this. So okay, come on. There we have. Now the strikes are starting. So they're also striking into Iran across several military and population centers. So also in this scenario, which is something that I added since the previous Israeli video, Russia has provided Iran with the means for a delivery system. Iran already has the capability of making somewhere between 3 to 5 crude atomic weapons. The delivery system is something in question, but in this scenario, we're going to say that Russia provided a delivery system that they're able to utilize. So they do strike back now in this scenario, launching low-yield nuclear strikes into Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Sorry about that. That's just my calendar telling me I have to train chest and back tomorrow. As if I was going to somehow forget that. So be on the lookout here sometime in the next week or so, depending on how some things play out in a different, personal life. We should see the week 3 video. And then I'm going to do some shorter videos, kind of more, I say mass consumption, but a little bit easier to digest. I think for any videos that get a lot of views, I make 2 kinds of videos, basically. There's these nuclear war simulations. Some that are for more what I consider enthusiasts, which goes over the attack plans and a little more detailed. I do everything manually. And there are some videos that are more for what I consider mass consumption. They're not really for what I consider an enthusiast level. So I'm going to do a couple more of those videos because they're a little more palatable to people. Okay. So we should start generating some casualties. Hope they pop up soon. I am really ready for a beer at this point. Training my butt off for this prep. Shrunk my inch about a waist since shrunk about an inch off my waist since August 1st. All right. 244 million losses. So if you saw at the end of week 1, it was sitting at about 5 million losses. Into week 2, exponentially greater amount of losses. So we see 152 million for China, 44 million for Russia, 22.8 million for the United States, 4.7 million for North Korea. Big change. When I hadn't fixed it, before I fixed the ICBMs, North Korea is still sitting at about 400,000 losses. So huge difference there. They're predicting global cooling of 3.8 Celsius. So let's take a look at some other countries that lost a sizable amount, but less than that. Saw Belarus, 2.8 million. Egypt, 29,000. Estonia, 128,000. France, 1.8 million. 687,000 in Germany. 76,000 in Guam, which would be a large portion of their population. 245,000 in Hong Kong. India, almost a million in India, 876,000. Again, that's part of the Pacific Theater. 1.6, almost 1.7 million in Iran. Israel, where were we at there? 483,000. 600,000 in Italy. 1.1 million in Japan. 189,000 in Latvia. Almost 190,000. 93,000 in Lebanon. 4.7 million in North Korea, which I already said. Holland, 4,775. 506,000 in Poland. 13,000 in Palestine. Already talked about Russia, 44 million. So 1.4, almost 1.5 million. South Korea, 367,000 in Sweden. 734,000 in Syria. Almost 1,800 in Taiwan from fallout. Turkey, 1.4 million. 184,000 in Ukraine. 3.2 million for United Kingdom. And so all in, 244 million. This is week 2. There's still a lot of nuclear forces. Of course, most have been expended, but there's still a sizable amount. We still have plenty of sub-based ballistic missiles that are still. United Kingdom hasn't fired any yet. France still has a sub. United States has a few, several. Russia has a few. China. So we still have a lot of nuclear forces left to expend. So thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.